If you like programming synths, there's a lot to like with ArcSyn. Number of oscillator choices, number of filter choices, number of LFO choices, and then even within those LFOs, the number of sub-choices in some of those is absolutely incredible by any measure. So I thought I'd run through some of the basic and moving up to some of the more complex things that you can do in this pretty amazing little one-page synth. So here's the initialized patch. We'll just change that to a sine wave. We'll send it to filter number 1. We'll turn these down because they are square wave by default, so now we're just left with the sine wave. We're seeing LFO number 1 down here. There's the rate knob. We're not seeing it move because it's not assigned to anything. So you don't see the LFOs do anything no matter how you change the controls until you've actually assigned it, and that can be a useful little prompt. So let's do something really basic. Let's put some vibrato on the mod wheel. So what's going to do the action? The mod wheel is, what do we want it to affect? Oscillator 1 frequency. What's going to generate it? LFO 1. And then we have to put multiply on. We'll give it some level. Now we give it some mod wheel. That's incredibly extreme, obviously. We can turn it down here. But we can also do this. Control, click there, take it down to 0 on a PC. Take it back up a bit. Move the rate up, maybe about there I quite like. And there we've got some vibrato on the mod wheel. So that's a really simple one. What we can also do, maybe some filter modulation. Let's low pass filter 4-pole. Let's change this to saw. Turn the filter all the way up. Let's go for LFO number 2. What's it going to affect? It's going to affect filter frequency 1. Give it a bit of power there. Switch to LFO 2. So there it is there. We can re-trigger the LFO as soon as we hit it by selecting reset. Again, it's a bit strong. Control click, take it to 0, give it a little bit. Make it a little bit more subtle, so we could probably slow it down. Maybe a little bit like that. Let's say we want some tracking on that as well. Let's give it a bit of envelope, a bit of sweeps, a little bit more obvious perhaps. Now, you can get normal tracking just by pumping up the note value. But let's say we wanted it to go in the other way, so we've got more filter lower. So, note, what do we want it to affect? We want it to affect filter 1 frequency. Now, if we wanted normal tracking, we could do it like that. Let's turn it down here a bit. But we want it to go in the opposite way. So we drag it this way. So it's negative. You see on the readout in the middle there, minus 100%. So now the amount of filter is getting less as we go up. Probably far too much. Let's pump this up a bit. So it's just about disappeared by the time we get up the top. Let's try something else. Go back to the initialized patch. Have 2 oscillators. A typical thing people will do to to thicken out a patch is to detune one oscillator slightly from the other. And sure, that's a great method. Play a few notes and the number of intersections will make that obvious beating not so obvious, but it's still there. It's a pretty basic way to do it. I much prefer a slightly different way. So LFO1, I'll send it to oscillator 1, just sort of keeps it nice and neat. I like, if possible, you can go LFO 1, 2, 3 to oscillators 1, 2, 3. Give it a little bit of level. Now, at the moment, that's pretty much the same as detuning via these detune pants. Change that back, even if it's a bit more extreme, but it's very regular, so we don't want that. Random variation 1, there's all sorts of fabulous little LFOs within that selection, and it's easy to sort of think, oh, I'm going to design such and such a sound, but once you start getting into some of the different LFOs, you can make some very happy discoveries. That's one of the great things about ArcSyn. But anyway, let's stay on track. When I go vibrato this time, we'll go to the second one along, which is smooth line. And we'll just have a little listen to this for a second. And notice how that is not just a continuous beating pattern, that is randomized. So we'll just give it a bit of release on the amplitude envelope. Number 1 is the filter, number 4 is amplitude. That's incredibly strong. So we'll take that down a little bit. It's on 127, control click, take it down to 0. It's still very strong, which is also why I say ArcSyn is the weirdness machine. It's easy to get weird sounds. Slow it down a bit. Let's do the same. LFO 2, oscillator 2. We've given that 8%. We'll do that again. This panel is a tiny bit fiddly. 9% there. Oscillator 2. We'll choose a one that is a bit different to the other one. Red noise. This is another great random amount. Now, because we've assigned it, you see it active now. And you can see what it's doing. It's another great smooth randomizer. So now we could take that down a little bit. Take this one down a little bit. That's on 127 still. Take it down a bit. So it has more effect than you think sometimes. You've got to take it really low. Bring in the third oscillator, unmodulated, just to ground it a bit. And just by 2 LFOs, slightly randomized, no effects, nothing of interest with the LFOs, with the envelopes. I mean, you've got a continuously variable detune, which I think is far superior just to hitting a normal detune where you get a regular beat to the detune. This is constantly changing. variation on this. Take the amplitude envelope right down. We'll pump these both all the way up. Take oscillator 2 out of the equation just for a minute. Now, you think that's quite a strong effect, and it is, but you can make it completely different by choosing, for example, octave. Pump it up a bit so we can hear the effect. Raise this. Let's put this back up to the top again so you can really hear it. So now what we've got, a randomized LFO at full power. Now this has got to stay at 100% here, otherwise it gets out of tune. This is forcing it to stay to octaves. This is keeping it in tune with the root note that you're playing, because if you move this down, now it's no longer going to be playing octaves in tune with the root note, so you've got to keep that at 100%. The byproduct of that, which isn't so good, is, as you can hear, you're getting a big range of octaves. Maybe you don't want such a big range, so vary it here, and now, as you can hear, it's only varying by 1 octave. Now let's combine a few of these things and make something a bit more spooky, perhaps. Sine alias is one I like, because the shape has a good effect. Turn those down. Interesting oscillator. Take it down a couple of octaves. A basic filter going, turn up the filter level. Have oscillator 1 just going to filter 1. We'll use our detune technique there. Oscillator 1 frequency, just give it a little bit. Change the LFO to smooth line. Take it down, slow it right down. And you don't hear much of that because you've got nothing to really compare it against. Let's just take that up just so you can hear it. So that's pretty subtle, but it's a good variation. Now, that is just pitch. LFO 2, oscillator 1, shape. Again, just give it a little bit here. Oscillator 2, we'll use another one of these. Red noise is a great one. Slow it down. Now oscillator 1, if we look at the rate, 0.32, so we want oscillator 2 not to be equally divisible. Like we wouldn't want it at 0.16, because then it's going to intersect with it and emphasize whatever the change is. Maybe in some patches that might be good, probably it's not going to be good. So change it a little bit. 2. Now this is changing the shape. Pretty subtle. Let's make it a bit stronger. Maybe a bit faster. Take it down an octave. Take that one down. Let's have this one going to filter 1 as well. Now let's do the same thing basically to the second oscillator. Oscillator 2 frequency, give a little bit. It's on LFO 3. We try a different one. Let's try glitch 2. Slow rate, small amount. Oscillator 2 frequency. Let's see what that does. Turn that one off for a minute so we can hear it. Not doing that much. Let's try something else. A lot of interesting little oscillators in here. Let's combine it with one. Maybe the stepped effect's not so good. Let's do that. LFO 4, we'll have oscillator 2 shape. Again, just give a little bit, and that's the default sine wave we're hearing. Maybe we could just keep it at that for now. We'll just take it down a little bit. While we're here, let's take the release up. Sine wave needs to be randomized. They always sound better randomized. Red noise is a good one. We haven't done anything to oscillator 3. Let's just leave that as a sine wave, just to give it some grounding, some stability. Put those two on the same octave. Now we haven't done anything at all with the filter, so let's do something with that now. Let's just experiment. We take the resonance up, take the filter down. There's sort of some interesting things happening in there, just that little bit in there. So let's try to target that. LFO 5. Filter 1 frequency, just give it a little bit. LFO, let's go for pivot. Let's go for pivot, just a little bit. Turn it up just so we can hear what it's doing. Down a bit. Maybe put this up a bit more. What's its rate? 10. That's on 2, 8. A bit predictable, go for 9. Just want these things intersecting in interesting ways, just to keep promoting the randomized feel. Let's give it some soft clip as well. It's sort of interesting. Now we're getting interesting. So the drive parameter on soft clip is pretty interesting. Let's try something with that. LFO 6, oscillator 1, filter 1 drive, again just a little touch, oscillator 6, what do we have, what's this one, ramp phase, that's quite interesting, just give it a little bit, got a good number, 0.7, slow it down a bit, let's pump it up again just to see. Let's just really hear it and see what happens. Well, we could put it into negative maybe. A little bit more resonance. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. If you like those sort of things. Let's have a look at the envelopes. Don't really need the filter envelope to be doing anything because the LFOs are doing all the work. I mean, the filter envelope is just a single cycle LFO really, and we've already got LFOs doing plenty of good stuff. Put the sustain up just so we don't have to worry about volume changes. Keep this all nice and simple. So let's something sort of a playable weird texture. It's pretty full on at the moment. Let's just dial it all back, see what we've got. Maybe a touch of tracking. See, now that you've got all these things doing the slight amount of randomization, you can play with these controls. And if you do something completely ridiculous and go, oh no, I've stuffed everything up, then multiple steps of undo, which is a great feature that was put in one of the recent updates. And that's sort of interesting as a background ambience. And we can use one of the techniques we looked at before. Go for the mod wheel, we'll target oscillator 3's frequency. What are we up to? LFO 7. Okay, you can hear that coming in. It's a sine wave. It'll do. So now that's going to come in with the mod wheel. In fact, let's turn oscillator 3 off and have the mod wheel bring in oscillator 3 level all the way up when we turn the mod wheel up. So this is without the mod wheel. Bring the mod wheel up. It's that top little bit of interest. Let's take that down a bit so the mod wheel doesn't bring it in quite so strongly. And we haven't used any effects. We haven't used the second filter. So let's do that now. Let's make it a bit more complex. Let's have oscillator 2 going to the second filter. Let's have this something a bit more extreme. Comb. I won't do that yet. I'll just have that there. Let's turn that off so we can just hear the second oscillator. We can cycle through some other filters. Let's turn the filter all the way up. Sort of interesting. Let's see what else we've got. Actually, if we put some soft clip on it, it can really emphasize the changes. So let's see. Maybe not. Frequency shift up, frequency shift down. That could be interesting. Frequency squash. It's giving it that little wobbling idea. Let's try that. We've got LFO 8 left. Send that to filter 2. Drive or cut off. Just go filter to frequency for now. Give it a little bit. Alpha 8. Just give it a bit. I'll go for square switch fractal. Fractal. That's sort of interesting. Pump it up so we can really hear it. Is there? Crossfade ramp. Let's try that, take that down a bit. Now to get a bit more variation here, we can look at, say, well, all these are modulation slots themselves. They're all just LFOs on that random function at a pretty low level. So we've used up all 8 LFOs. If we want this one to be a bit more unusual, we could have source 2 being modulation 1. So whatever modulation 1 is, which just happens to be a single LFO, we can use that. So now we've got LFO 8 combined with modulation 1. We'll take the low value. So now it's not just LFO 1 or 8, it's a mixture of both on the low value. So let's bring that back. Call that beautiful, unless you wanted some sort of slightly disturbing ambience. Let's get the mod wheel doing something else. Let's get the mod wheel doing frequency inversion, so frequency filter, I mean. So one filter goes one way, one goes the other. That's sort of interesting. Let's get some effects on it. Some reverb, damper, bit of decay. Won't have the mix too high. In fact, let's have mod wheel bring in that effect. This mod wheel effects one mix. Pump that up. I mean, that's a lot, but let's see how that goes. So, bring the mod wheel. Play with that a little bit. Also play with the resonance. Filter to resonance. So when we turn up the mod wheel, let's get the resonance all the way up to the top. Clipping a bit on the levels there, so let's do one more thing with mod wheel. So when we raise up the mod wheel, it'll affect the amp level, and the amp level will go down. So there's no mod wheel. Start to bring it in. Just keeps the volume in check a bit. Buzz there, hasn't it? Sort of like that. Ah, that's a bit better. Probably with the clipping and the resonance on filter 1 we could do something as well. Let's go back to the first page. Filter 1 frequency. Let's push that up a bit. So this is with no mod wheel. Filter 1 frequency is LFO5. Look at that again. Now just as an experiment, actually let's do it on filter 2. Filter 2. What have we got modifying that? Filter 2 frequency. Okay, we've got 8 and modulation source 1. So what we could do, let's change that to something like, let's try something a bit crazier. A randomized amount, and let's go all the way up. That off. Okay, and you can really hear that. Let's take it down. So that'd sound interesting with a bit of delay on it, wouldn't it? Okay, so we might decide that sounds interesting, but there's too much of it. Maybe we only want it to happen every now and then. So let's have 4 modulation slots. You see that cycling through there now. We can randomize it even more, so instead of this going 1, 2, 3, 4 and then coming back to the start again, we can randomize it. subtle. Let's change it to a different LFO type. Into the random position. That can be interesting. What happens with the module these days? Don't know that LFO is working. Keep experimenting until we find one that's good. Slow it down a bit. We'll just make it 2 slots. Let's make it reset on each key press. Back at the start again. And again, we could just hold this forever and it's just going to, when it's consistent, but it's randomized, which is quite easy to do, as you can see, and makes ArcSyn perfect as an ambient background generator.